Okay, this is Module 18, Quadratic Equations, Complex Numbers. We're going to go through a lot of the material. There's a lot we can't get through just for time restrictions. Have to go through this, do the skill check, then hopefully you'll be able to skip several of the sections in Module 18. Okay, number 1, tell the nature of the solutions. Okay, use the b squared minus 4ac, the discriminant. And then b is the middle term, so it's negative 2 squared. 4a is the front term, c is the last term. So it's negative 2 squared, 415. Should turn out to be 4 minus 20 is negative 15. Whenever it's negative, you get two non-real solutions. Some other options, you can, a perfect square will give you two reals or one real, depending on what the numbers are. Positive means it's two real. Okay, whenever you have two binomials multiplied, 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 2i is 8i, 5 times 3 is 15, and 5 times 2 is 10. I squared is negative, cancels this negative, turns it into a plus 10. 8 minus 15 is negative 7. Then you take your 12 and your 10, combine those, and get 22 minus 7i. Okay, solving for b, we need to put this in quadratic form. ab squared plus cb minus w. Okay, the quadratic formula takes negative, the middle term, which is c, plus or minus, again, that middle coefficient, c squared minus 4. The leading coefficient is a, the last number is minus w, over 2, and the front is a. If we just clean this up, you get negative c plus or minus, c squared minus becomes plus 4aw and 2a. Okay, solve this one with the quadratic formula. We need to put it in the right order. So move the 7 and move the 4. So it's 3x squared minus 4x minus 7. And again, it's negative, the middle term, so it's negative, negative 4. Middle term squared minus 4, front term, and the back term. So it's 3 and negative 7. If you multiply this out, two negatives make a positive 4. 4 squared is 16. 4 times 3 times negative 7 is plus 84. And when you put these together, you get 100. Now the square root of 100 on your calculator is 10, so it's 4 plus 10. And the plus minus means 4 plus and 4 minus over 6. Okay, if we simplify this fraction first, that's 14 over 6, which is 7 halves. Should be 7 thirds. Let me correct that. Okay, got that corrected. 14 over 6 should be 7 thirds. And 4 minus 10 is negative 6. Divided by 6 should be negative 1. Okay, graphing. Okay, like we had earlier with the absolute values, next to x is left and right, so plus is left. It's opposite of what you might think. And then outside is the same, minus means down. So we're going to go left 1, down 3. So we're going to draw a graph, go left 1, down 3. Now instead of a V-shaped, a square is U-shaped. It's quadratic, so it's big U, so draw a big U. Okay, 6. Dividing, you take whatever's in the bottom, you take its opposite, it's called the conjugate. Instead of 8 minus, we make it 8 plus. Multiply the top and the bottom. Okay, you multiply 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 5 is 40. 5 times 8 is 40. And 5 times I is 25, I squared. Then on the bottom, 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 5 is 40. Minus 8 times 5 is negative 40. And minus 5 times 5 is negative 25. Now these I squares, the top one turns into a minus. The bottom one, I squared is negative. And there's another negative, so it turns into a plus. So at the top we have 64. 80 minus 25. At the bottom we have 64. The i's disappear, and we have plus 25. Because I squared is negative, and there's another negative. So when we combine these out, we get 39 on the top, plus 80i over 89. Okay, complete the square. We have to multiply this out. X squared minus 6 minus 2x plus 12 is equal to negative 5. Then we move our 12 over because we're going to turn this into a perfect square. So we have x squared minus 8x is equal to, you subtract 12, negative 17. Okay, to complete the square, you take whatever's in front of x and you cut it in half, making 4. Then you square it. That makes a complete square. Half and square. So 4 squared is 16. So I have plus 16 on the left and I have plus 16 on the right. Now this is a perfect square. 16 is a perfect square. So we take the square root of it and the square root of your x, and you get x minus 4, perfect square, is equal to, and this turns out to be negative 1. So we turn it into a complete square, and the factoring of that, you can take the square root of the first one and half of the middle one, or the square root of the two ends, whichever, and it'll work for you. Okay, 8, solve. If you move the 10 over, you'll get 2x squared plus x minus 10. Okay, the factors of 2x squared are x and 2. The factors of 10 are 2 and 5. So I did 2x plus 5 and x minus 2. Then I check it. I take the middle ones, 5x. And I take the outside, 2 times 2 is minus 4. 5 minus 4 does make my positive 1. Okay, to actually solve these, I just take the opposite. The opposite of plus 5 is minus 5. Opposite of multiplication of 2 is division by 2. So it's negative 5 divided by 2. Opposite of minus 2 is plus 2. Then the interval, since we're less than, we're in between those two, so it's negative 5 halves to positive 2. And it's equal to, so they both get brackets. Okay, complete the square. We did this a minute ago. Except now we have a 4x squared, so we have to divide everything by 4. So you get x squared, 5 fourths, 6 fourths. We take half of the middle, 5 fourths, cut in half is 5 over 8. Square that, you get 25 over 64 on both sides. Now, to get a common denominator on this side, I'm going to multiply it by 16. 6 times 16 is 96. 4 times 16 is 64. Now I can add them together. The second factor, x plus 5 over 8, because you take half of this, squared, and combine those, 121/64. So that's a complete square. Now you could square root it and solve it. Okay, suppose you want to solve this. Well, we take the square root, gives you the square root of 11. Make sure you put a plus and minus. Okay, so, since there's a fraction, I'm going to multiply by 3, giving me 2x, 12, and 3 square roots of 11. Subtract 12 from both sides, subtract 12 on this side, and then divide by 2. So it's negative 12 plus or minus 3 square roots of 11, all divided by 2. And you can chop those into 2 pieces or leave them separate, or leave them all as one like I did. Okay, you tell how many solutions. Okay, we did that earlier. You take the b squared minus 4ac. b is the middle term, negative 15 squared. 4 times the first one is 12. 8 is the last one. So it's a middle one squared minus 4 first last. 15 squared is 225 minus 4 times 12 times 8, I believe is negative 159. Now, since it's negative, there are 2 imaginaries, or 2 complex, whatever you want to call them, depending on what they're going to, they usually give you some choices in the lab. Some other options, 1 rational is if you get a 0 for your answer. 2 rational if you get a perfect square, and 2 irrationals is if you get a positive. So these are some of your options for your b squared minus 4ac. Okay, 12 simplifies. Square root of a negative is I, and the number 12 is 4 times 3. Square root of 4 is 2, so it's 2 with an I and a square root of 3. 3 can't come out because it's not a perfect square. Okay, 13 divided by 7, 11 divided by 7. Take the square root, so you get plus or minus the square root of 11 divided by 7. Right, 14, solve. We have a square, so we're going to take a square root like we did above. So we have 2x plus 5 is plus or minus the square root of, and the negative turns into I, 21. Okay, subtract 5 from both sides. We've got to get our x by itself. and divide by 2, so it's negative 5 plus or minus plus or minus I squared is 21 over 2. Now 15, write an equation that have these solutions. Okay, it's x minus both of those, so it's x minus 3 minus I and x minus 3 plus I. So it's minus, 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 and this turns into a plus. Okay, we have to multiply this out. X times x is x squared minus 3 plus x and I. Take minus 3 times x, minus 3 times 3, minus 3 times I. So it's minus 3x plus 9 minus 3I. Then you take I times x is negative, I times 3 is positive 3 with an I, and I times I is minus I squared. Turns into a positive 1. So if we add these up, we have an x squared. 3 and 3 is 6x. 9, the x's and the i's go away because one's plus and one's minus. The 3i go away, same reason. I squared with a minus turns into plus 1. Because I squared is negative, and a negative makes a positive. Okay, you can combine these. X squared minus 6x plus 10. We started with equals 0, so that's it. Okay, 16. Solve this. In order to solve it, we need a 0. I would move the negative 2x squared over. So it's positive 2x squared minus 3x plus 12. I would use the quadratic formula. Negative middle term, b. And then the middle term squared under a square root. Minus 4 first last. First is 2, last is 12, divided by 2 and the first one, 2a. We just call these a, b, c. First, middle, last. Okay, we combine these negatives, becomes positive 3. 3 squared is 9. 4 times 2 is 8 times 12 is 96. So that's 3 plus or minus should be a negative. Okay, so 9 minus 96 is negative, so it's an I, 87 over 4. And then 17, simplify. Whenever I simplify, I take the first one and leave it alone. Minus means I change my 4 and I change my 7. And then plus means I leave my last one. And I put them in vertically. So I take 3 plus I, under it minus 4 plus 7i, and then under that plus 3 plus 2i. Then it's easier if you're vertical. 2 minus 4 plus 3 is 1. 3 plus 7 plus 2 is 12i. So I believe that concludes everything in section 18 that I could cover. There are other things in there. Some quadratic graphs that go sideways, but I just can't have time to go through all that in a short review of the material.